to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. If I could just read the meeting notice. Discussion and ordinance amending code of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 290 entitled Zoning by extending existing NB zoning district to include 8 and 20 Stockbridge Avenue and 9 Magnolia Street, Lowell. Before we get into the presentation by Attorney Theodora, who's representing the petitioner, I'd just like to recognize City Manager Kevin Murphy, who's here, Eric Slagle, our Director of Development Services, City Councilor Rita Mercier, and City Councilor William Samara. So thank you all for being here. And obviously we have a number of people from the neighborhood here, and you will certainly all be entitled to address the zoning subcommittee. What I would like you to do when you do come, and you know this, is to just give your name and address for the record so the city clerk can make sure he has your name and address correctly. So with that, if it's okay with my colleagues, I'll turn it over to Attorney Theodoro for presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Milanazzo, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present here this evening to the zoning subcommittee. I handed out a little folder to you with some exhibits in there, and I'll go over them in a moment. The first thing I'd like to mention that and I brought the zoning map of the City of Lowell, and I just wanted to point out with respect to the zoning map here that we're talking about extending a neighborhood business zone in Pawtucketville. There are only 3, the neighborhood business in this section of the city is extremely limited to 3 specific areas. One is limited to Mammoth Road. This small section here is limited to Pawtucket Boulevard, where the Hamill brothers are, and there's another one further up, I believe, Varnum Ave. So there's 3 very limited areas there. So the zoning was, I believe the zoning map was done in 2004, 2005, where this is drawn, and I believe that this was done with these specific businesses in mind. It was not done prospectively, but done with these existing businesses in mind. At the time, it was contemplated and studied on the Pawtucketville Master Plan as being adequate. As you know, the zoning ordinance is a living document. It's subject to change. It's subject to change by DPD. There are a number of amendments in there. And zoning is subject to change. And every zoning change should have a purpose. Now, I want to bring this back into the Pawtucketville Master Plan, which was done with great input from the community, that the plan was to represent a vision with residents, business people, and all stakeholders. Economic development is part of that plan. It's an element of that plan. And in this instance, economic development is the preservation of the commercial tax base, which my clients are commercial property holders. They are, I would say, significant stakeholders in this community in that they've been in business in Pawtucketville at this site since 1960, over 50 years. So as a result of that, I would say that they have something to say with respect to their zoning and something to say with respect to their growing their business, maintaining their business, and also for the city to maintain its economic, commercial tax base at this site. The Hamill brothers here at this location are perhaps the oldest family-run business in all of Pawtucketville. And I believe that's significant here. And I believe that the board, this board and the city council should take an interest in that. In taking an interest in that, in balancing their needs, their commercial needs, with the community and the residents. I don't think you'd find a bad word that would ever be said about how they conduct their business at this site. They keep an extremely well-run operation. It's a clean operation. They run that business from 8 to 5, It's not open on the weekends. It's not open at night. 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, they attempt to clear the lot and make it available for public use for parking for any activities along the river. Now, they've seen all the developments along the river for the last 50 years. And I must say, the scenic beauty there is wonderful. It's as nice a strip of property that you're going to find in the Commonwealth along the Merrimack River there. And because of that, it's used. It's used by everyone. Part of their plan here and their expansion of their parking is to go ahead and, this is another element of the Pawtuckaville plan, to maintain and enhance the streetscapes of the neighborhood business districts. What they propose to do here is, if they are able to do this and move the cars from the front to allow for parking in the rear, they will go ahead and make improvements. Now, first, I'd like to call your attention to the zoning plan that you have in front of you. You see the area marked in yellow. That is the area that they propose to extend the zoning. They own a house on Magnolia Street, which is an existing house, which is in very good condition, and the house is being rented and used as a residential property. The house on Stockbridge is in very, very poor condition, and by all means, that has to come down. But that's where the parking would be, in that lot. You see around the area there, a 10-foot buffer. And we did a walkthrough there, and Councilman Milanazzo came, and we walked the lot. We showed him the lot, we walked the lot, and we mapped out with him where we would have a proposed buffer, 10 feet, some arborvitaes and some other screening items there, plantings, that would screen it with the abutters. You see on the northerly side of this lot, lot 176, which is in red, that's a lot that was deeded to the neighbor in the rear, Mr. and Mrs. Comporis, and that was done in 1997. That's about almost a 4,000 square foot lot that was deeded to them for no consideration, and the reason that was done is they didn't want to have any issues with any neighbors, so they deeded them that lot to create a buffer, and that lot is now fenced in, and it's a nice buffer between the properties. I also want to point out one other item here to you is the existing neighborhood business zone on the opposite side of Stockbridge Avenue is currently used neighborhood business, and they're able to park cars there, and that abuts a residential property. That has been ongoing, and they use that lot. They use it now, and part of what they could do is to remove vehicles that are there and put them in this back lot, which will be screened. They don't have any plans at the present time to expand this, to sell this business. The fear, and this has been expressed in the past by the neighborhood organization, that if this is granted in the future, that someone else would come along, perhaps scrape the site and put something up in its place. And they would have to go through the very rigorous process if anything would be done with that. And Mr. Frechette is here tonight on the planning board, and it's a very extremely rigorous process of site plan approval that has to be done through public hearing, through notice to the abutters, through hearings. Public safety is addressed. The building site, the use and land use of the building is addressed. Traffic is addressed. All those issues are handled in a public forum in a very detailed manner. And it's an exhausting process, and the applicants have to go through that. That's not what's happening here. They're not expanding their building. They're using that for parking. And also, this also could trigger parking, if this is approved, over a certain number of spaces, could trigger some site plan approval there. But what you have here is along Pawtucket Boulevard, they would be making improvements there because they wouldn't need to stack cars over there during the day. They would add the sidewalks over there. They could lower the sign that they have now and perhaps do another, a lower sign, something that is done that will mix in very, very good in the landscape over there and the scenic beauty over there. All this would be done to this, and the business itself, the way this business is run, wouldn't be any different. There's not going to be junk cars stacked in the back. There's going to be none of that. The cars they're not a junkyard. They're an auto body repair shop. An auto body repair shop that's been there for 60 years. There can be sufficient fencing put in. There can be sufficient trees that could be put in to go ahead and mask the property from the residential area. And also, this is not going to impact anyone on a weekend, and it's not going to impact anybody after 5 o'clock. I'd like you to go a little further into some of the aerial photos that we have. One aerial photo that we have here is the first one here is a shot of the property, and it depicts the site, and that is Magnolia Street. This zoning change goes through. This visual that you have right here is not going to change. This is going to stay exactly as it is with respect to the existing buildings on the site, and that house that is in the rear of the building that is owned by the Hamels now, which would be, if we are successful, a business, neighborhood business, would maintain the house, and if at some point in time they may use that for offices. What will change over here from this perspective is you're going to have sidewalks repaired in the front. You're going to have trees that will be dressed up in the front to match what is across the street, and you're going to have additional landscaping done on the corner pieces there to define those corners. Now, one element here that people always talk about is traffic. You're not going to have any increase in traffic. It's not going to be affected any way or any differently than they operate right now. This is not a retail business. It's not a gas station where people are driving up and filling up. It's not a retail business where people are coming in and buying items and then getting in their cars and leaving. It's not that type of business. It's a business in which cars are left there and they repair them, then the customers come and pick them up. And that's part of what they'll do with that parking in the rear also, is to have customer parking back there. So then I have another photo, another aerial photo behind that. This gives it a perspective from the other side, a little bit more on Stockbridge. And you see the Stockbridge Avenue there. You see the house with the red roof, which is the house that exists there right now that we would propose to come down, and that's where the lot would go. And you see a sufficient buffer there between that and the house behind them. The house that exists there right now on Stockbridge, that greenhouse that looks in, there's not going to be any change from their view there. As a matter of fact, they currently abut the neighborhood business on the other side. And also, I'd have to say, if we consider that this business has been here since 1960, they've been here since many of the other homes have been here on each one of these streets. Finally, we come to the last photograph that I have here, and this one, which goes and shows you the complete aerial of Magnolia on one side and Stockbridge on the other, and shows that on one side, on Magnolia, there'll be no visual change at all. That house would exist, but the house with the red roof would come down and improvements would be made there.
Do we not have any for the rest of us, or just?
I apologize.
I can't even follow what you're saying because.
I gave this to the subcommittee. Why don't you take it if you would?
Well, you can take it, but I think if you ever come.
I could go right ahead and.
Well, it isn't fair. We have other people here that would like to be.
I gave this to the members of the committee, and I apologize. Now, just to recollect my thoughts or whatever on this right here, as you can see with this last aerial photo, that the site would remain the same except for taking down that property there, and there would be substantial landscaping on that site in order to mask the properties that exist, that abut this property here. And you would have improvements made on the site, and from a point of view of driving up to that site, it would be an improvement. So you may ask the question, why don't they make those improvements now? Well, they need the space in front of this building as it is right now to keep moving cars in and out of their building. And on the weekends, what they do is they take the cars that they're working on and stuff their building and get as many cars in there as possible so they can have a clean front right there so that it's made available for the public use for parking, so that it's made available for the activities that exist over there. So we feel that in part of, as we said before, and going back over this with the Pawtucketville Master Plan, of maintaining the tax base, an element of economic development and land use here, that this is a good use of this land, it's a good commercial use of this land, and this is something that would add to the tax revenue for the city. We also have a business here that there has never been any complaints whatsoever. If you checked anything with the building department here in the city, you would not find any violations. You would find no violations at all with the way they run their business or maintain their property. This would allow a business to stay there and to excel. And as we said before, a new owner comes along, you know, nothing is forever, and we know that. But if anything ever happened over there, it would be site plan review. Strict public scrutiny of the site, public hearings, notification to the neighbors, and that is a very, very high burden to maintain and have a successful project voted on in the city. So if you have any questions, or I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Theodoro. Before we open it up for questions from my colleagues, I just want to recognize Councilor Jim Leary is here. Thank you for being here as well. Any of my colleagues have questions? Councilor Belanger.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Theodoro, for the presentation. I just hope we're meeting again on Monday, that you'll have enough copies there'll be a large crowd there, so I hope you'll have either a large presentation board or several copies.
I spoke with Deb Forgione, and I thought that she wanted us there on Monday, but she doesn't want it. She doesn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. I thought
Well, again, I apologize, because that's my understanding from emails, that we were going to do this again on Monday, and that you asked us to take no action tonight.
Correct.
Because we were going to do it again on Monday.
That is not correct.
Okay, I apologize, I misunderstood.
I'm with you, Councilor.
But what I
I'm
will
trying
do-
to prepare the neighbor as best as possible.
What I will
here.
do is prepare, just make a copy of this and have it available for Ms. Forgione as well, for her neighborhood organization, and also get copies, extra copies, deliver them to the clerk so that he can distribute them to all the councilors.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I mean, Councilor Mercy and some as well as the abutters should be looking at this to see. I mean, we have TVs as well, Council, you know that, so in the future, it's only in fairness that everybody gets to see what you're talking about.
It's a bit of a unique situation, just in that this isn't something that's filed with the city DPD. Normally, the city keeps an excellent website where current projects go on there, and this hasn't been filed with the city at this time. Otherwise, it would be there on file with the city.
Okay. Okay, moving on. So, thank you for the presentation. And I do want to sort of thank Hamel Brothers for the years, over 50 years of being in business for the city. And I do appreciate that, sort of less that deeded land that they, more or less gave to an abutter, more or less, just to avoid any conflict. I think that was very, very neighborly and very responsible for a business to do. And I also appreciate the use of that parking lot. I've used it on occasions for several events that are along the river, especially in the upcoming season. So I think that's important. So I commend and appreciate what they do for the abutters. There's an ice cream stand next door. I'm sure he appreciates it very much. So I just wanted to, sort of commend your customer on that, so to speak. So thank you very much. So now, does this create any additional jobs, Councilor, with all this parking in the back? Does it, in essence, create any additional jobs?
No, that was a question that was brought up at the planning board. this is not a development where we're adding anything that will create additional jobs, but what this change does do is that it preserves and enhances the existing tax base. I think that's an important element here.
Okay, it's important. It's not everything, but it is important. Now, on the renditions here, I don't see any finished product, Counselor. When the sidewalks are installed with shrubbery and whatnot, I think that'd be aesthetically pleasing to look at as well. So why don't we have anything like that in the package?
I would like to meet with DPD and meet with them and go over and treat this as something that, this is not something that's approved. This is not something that is recommended, but something that what can be done if this was accepted, if this was done, and we wanted to go ahead and make these improvements, what would they want us to do? And we would like to take that type of action. What would they like us to do? It is a very expensive proposition, and this rendering here is expensive. It's an expensive proposition to go make different plans and to speculate on what you want to do. We would like to have something there, some guidance, and say, be prospective on this and say, this is what we think is best for that area, and do that.
Okay, so in other words, you're saying if the extension of the neighborhood business district is improved, you'll sit with planning and development on the rendition of the improvements in front of you?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, but some rendition would have been nice to, you don't have to go full scale, but just a point I'd like to make. Now, on another note, if hypothetically speaking, the council does approve the extension of the zone, does it still need to go through the regulatory boards as well? I see Mr. Frascetti, I know was already in front of the planning. Does it need to go in front of zoning too?
No, I believe if this zoning extension is passed per se, then it does not have to go before the zoning board for any type of relief or dimensional relief at all. But like I stated, if we do this, if we're taking up pavement and replacing it with any green space at all, then this is something that would probably trigger something from engineering, DPD, and we'd have to take all those factors into account. It's just not a process where you go in and allow a contractor to dig up pavement over there and to replace it with arborvitaes or any trees or anything like that, because you're changing it, and so we'd have to do that in conjunction with the engineering department and planning and development.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rourke?
Quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This plan that gave us for this meeting, is this any different than what you went in front of the planning board with?
This is the same plan this plan we didn't have at the planning board, actually. The plan that we had at the planning board was just the zoning change plan. That's the only plan that we had.
Okay, and so any city officials, Mr. Slagle, Mr. Shanahan, have not seen these plans yet as well?
They have seen each of these plans that are here. They've seen the proposed, the zoning plan, and they've seen this rendering as well.
Okay, so I have a next question, Mr. Slagle. So you reviewed these documents?
I don't know that I've actually seen those documents. No, I'm not sure about that.
Well, they're filed with the city. So
I thought you said, and not to be a wise guy, but I thought you had said nothing has been filed yet with the city.
the zoning plan is filed with the city. This plan right here is filed with the city. The zoning plan that you have right here was filed, and this was provided to this rendering was also provided to the city council when we were here the last time. So that was here as well.
Okay, so I guess, so as far as those plans we have here, those are not shown to Mr. Slagle, Mr. Shanahan, just to get that cleared up.
No, Mr. Shanahan he wouldn't be involved in it at this stage of the process, no.
Okay, so what would be the difference between what you went in front of the planning board with to what you have in front of us today? You said it was a slight, just the pictures that you have here?
Well, just a better explanation to the members of the subcommittee of what this site looks like and what the proposed improvements would be.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. At this point, before I open it up to the public, I know Mr. Frechette, who's here from the planning board, would like to talk about the reasons they came, up with their vote and decision. So if it's okay with my colleagues, I'll recognize Mr. Frechette from the Planning Board. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, other esteemed councilors, and Manager Murphy. My name is Jerry Frechette. I'm a member of the City of Lowell Planning Board. I reside at 80 Dunbar Ave. I actually chaired the meeting the evening of our public hearing. And listening to the City Council meeting on February 23rd, I thought there was some items that needed to be clarified before this body here. And first item, attorney for the petitioner, Attorney Eliades, stated that there were 2 alternates that voted that evening at the Planning Board. The Planning Board does not have 2 alternates. The alternate is Mr. Sinetsky, and he is a very capable and qualified member of the Planning Board, and he voted that evening. It was a 4-0 vote. It was a unanimous vote not to approve the request to extend the neighborhood business zone into the suburban single-family zone. I did speak to the chairman, Mr. Lanahan, who was home ill that evening, but he was watching the meeting. It's the truth. I think all of us that end up sick, we still watch the meeting. And he concurred, and I talked to him, making sure he was okay with me speaking this evening on this issue regarding his opinion, and he concurred with the Planning Board vote. And that would have been a 5-0 vote against the request. Also, what I wanted to clarify is Councilor Leahy had indicated that the Planning Board letter of recommendation seemed kind of weak, and there were 2 reasons. But those are the 2 main reasons in which you evaluate a zoning change. And and I'd like to read them, Mr. Chairman. The proposed redevelopment project for the area in consideration would promote the encroachment of commercial areas by too great an extent upon the surrounding suburban residential neighborhood. The second one, while the master plan generally calls for supporting small businesses throughout the city, the board found that the proposal would not accentuate the objectives of the neighborhood business district, creating walkable business corridors, which is what the intent of the neighborhood business district is, and would not be a catalyst for economic development through creation of jobs, as noted here this evening, okay? And I think it's important to understand those elements. And in thinking that through, I thought it was important to give really why the Planning Board came up with these, what's behind this. And even in future recommendations from the Planning Board, maybe it'd be important to list what's behind that, to understand the substance behind that. And when you look at the Pawtucketville Master Plan, and, I served on the city's master plan committee, drove the process to ensure that there was a action plan to form the Pawtucketville Master Plan, served on that committee, met for 2 years on a regular basis, walked these neighborhood business districts. If you look at these 2 business districts on that map, these are the only neighborhood business districts that are surrounded by suburban single-family zones. Only 2 is the Varnum Ave in this particular spot. On the Pawtucket Boulevard, where Shirley Lane is, that was a neighborhood business district. That was eliminated because we did an existing conditions evaluation, and we saw that the majority of the development was suburban single-family. This is the quote in the Pawtucketville Master Plan. Pawtucketville Boulevard never developed into the retail strip corridor envisioned during the second half of the 20th century. Instead, most of its development moved towards suburban multifamily residential and small-scale commercial projects. The boulevard's location within a string of riverfront parks and suburban single-family neighborhoods requires that future developments occur in a manner that provides protection from the unattractive, inappropriate projections. We've got a conflict. We're not going, usually a neighborhood business district has a transition. And Anne Marie Page can talk about that regarding Bridge Street, where we've got transitions to other types of zones. This is going right from neighborhood business to suburban single family. And the reference to this board oversight, and if anything, is changes on the site, and the fact that the planning board did not look at these plans, these aren't the plans you look at in making a zoning change decision. This is if it's going for site plan review or a special permit. Councilor Belanger knows that, serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals. This is looking at what is the impact, what is the potential impact? Is this the proper zone for this particular area? And by extending this zone and creating a larger footprint of a neighborhood business district within a suburban residential area, currently, if you look at the table of uses, 36 uses that are not allowable right now in that suburban single-family zone would now be allowable if this council so chooses to extend the zone. 8 of those would be by right. That means they don't have to go to any board, a by right. 26 of those would be special permits. Well, I will tell you, serving 9 years on the planning board and serving for 10 years as the head of a neighborhood group, what that does is you're basically, if you take that vote to extend it, you're telling the neighbors, you're going to have to come out and fight for this. Right now, you don't have to. 26 uses that would open the door to a special permit. Right now, they can sleep in their homes and not worry about that. So a vote to do that, and everybody needs to understand that. And that's what you look at in trying to determine if is this appropriate? Is this appropriate in this particular area? It's very sensitive. And we recognize those businesses that were there and certainly wanted to make sure that they continue to exist. But you have a very delicate balance there. And you talk about the majestic river, and part of why that looks so nice is what you're looking at is you're not looking at hard commercial development. You're looking at residential development for the most part along that boulevard. That's what gives it that soft feel and that suburban feel. So this is what's behind this decision. Not whether or not there's going to be a fence over here. Or, and the council can make that decision to change a zone if they want to on that, but there's no guarantee this is going to happen. And if, God forbid, if their business doesn't turn out to be successful, they can sell it. And now you've increased the footprint for something major to go in there, beyond this. So I think it's just important for everybody to understand that. At home, here in the council chambers this evening, this is what was behind the planning board decision in reviewing all of this material. This is what goes on in determining a zoning change recommendation. So with all due respect, I would ask the council to give careful consideration because, again, what you're doing is you're notifying the neighbors, the residents, that there's 36 uses right now that you can sleep and not have to worry about. And if you vote to extend it, you're going to increase that further into the neighborhood, increase the footprint in which something larger could happen. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak there.
Thank you, Mr. Frechette. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Snetsky here this evening as well. Thank you, Richard, for being here. Any other questions from my colleagues at this point before we open it up to the neighborhood? Hearing none, I would again offer the podium to anyone who would like to speak to and address the subcommittee.
Okay, Deb Forgione, Pawtucketville Citizens Council. I think the planning board made a wise, sound decision. He told you exactly what the task is of a planning board, and you have a whole neighborhood that supports that decision. And with that said, I could probably take another 10 to 15 minutes and read comments that we got through emails, because when he talked about how many more reasons we might have to come out, 36, 5:30 on a Tuesday, I know my neighborhood, and I'm going to tell you, people are hardworking, and they're usually coming home now. They're going to be home making supper for their kids, going out to be on a soccer team, be coaches. We've had some people that are out coaching, so they couldn't come tonight. People that are working in Boston that are on the train that couldn't come out. So these are the kinds of challenges that we have to get out here in larger groups. But I can tell you this, we've got a few people here tonight that do want to speak, but I want to read a letter from Christopher Williams, who lives on 332 Varnum Avenue. And he said, to the neighborhood group, thank you for supporting residential neighborhoods. I moved here 16 years ago because of the individuals and families I saw rehabilitating housing across the city, making commitments to the neighborhoods. I have invested greatly in restoring a Queen Anne house to its original charm. Lowell has improved by being a residential city where generation after generation chooses to live and newcomers make it in their new home. Zoning exists to define an area and keep its value and character. Eroding residential areas erodes both the monetary and intangible value I invested here. If continued without check, we will again become an area people pass over with the resulting spiral of houses neglected and run down. And I just wanted to make another comment that when they mention how long they've been there as a business, and we've had many conversations, a glass of wine and a cup of coffee, there are many residents that have been there 60 years or more. In fact, they're generational. And they're quiet because they're out working. They use the schools, they use the hospitals, they use the stores, and you never hear from them because they're busy being a citizen. And for their voices to be muted because they're not out in forefront, having a business, making money, they're doing what we all aspire to do: buy a home, live in a neighborhood, have kids, have a lifestyle where you're in a neighborhood. And I just feel as though that this here is kind of the cornerstone of what Pawtucketville has always been trying to do. We want to be a neighborhood, and we are, and we're zoned to be a neighborhood. And to creep up the street for more neighborhood business is wrong. And what I need is 4 councilors, 4 champions of Pawtucketville to, when this comes to you as city council, vote against it. You need 6 councilors to make that change for us. You need 6 councilors to change that zoning. So what I need is 4 of you that supports Pawtucketville staying the strong neighborhood that it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Anyone else? Good evening. Name and address, please.
Good evening, gentlemen, ladies. Thank you very much for the time. My name is Al Saber. I live at 33 Dunbar Avenue. And I apologize. I'm going to jump around on my notes. It'll probably be shorter than anticipated because my friends and colleagues that came up here have touched on a couple of these items. I've lived at that address. Well, I shouldn't say that. I was born at that address, and I bought it from my parents' house 8 years ago. I've been a Pawtucketville resident all my life. I moved out. I moved back when the opportunity arose because at the time when I moved out, I needed to afford a 2-family home. I needed that income. When it stabilized, my employment stabilized, I was able to move back into a suburban residential neighborhood. Everything I do is on that side of the city. My wife and I have been involved with neighborhood groups, nonprofit groups for over 30 years. Everything we do is on this side of the city, and we absolutely love that part of the city. But I have to touch on a couple of items that floated through these walls since January. I've been to every one of the meetings. I'm addressing this for the 5th time. The councilors had mentioned for their petitioners that they've been there for, and I won't go on and tell you glowingly how much I think of the Hamels, because I do, and it's already been stated, not by me, but by everybody else. Well, guess what? I've been paying my tax, and I keep a very nice home, and I've been doing that for 57 of my years. But I'm not looking for any. I'm not asking you to give me anything because of that. But I'm not asking to turn around and change anything that I'm doing either. Now, they made mention about the parking lots. Now, if I lived in another part of the city and I wanted to come over to a concert, I would love that there's a parking lot across the street from the concert. But across the street from the concert is where I put my head down at the end of the day. So I'm dealing with, as we all do in that neighborhood, with another parking lot that is freed up for the neighborhood. And don't get me wrong, I think it's a wonderful gesture, but from an aesthetics point of view, it's very tough sometimes. I don't use the boulevard coming home, not through the summer. The entrance of Magnolia Street between the 2 businesses that exist there, that street doesn't exist on certain nights. There are cars and motorcycles that cross over. That end of the street is closed pretty much. So to say that we offer up parking, yes, they do. They offered it up. The councilor mentioned at the first meeting back in January that there was, just last weekend, he said there was a road race whereupon they asked the owners if they could use the facility, and they did. Now, my second job entitles me to come downtown. I work downtown at the auditorium. I use my bike to go to and from. Well, I came back at the end of that event And as I see quite frequently, they had tables set up with cups and water bottles and whatnot for the runners. Well, they took their tables and water bottles and everything, but cups and paper and everything was still strewn right in front of their business. And that's just a regular, that's a regular occurrence. So it's not all sunshine sometimes. And it's very tough. When I lived there, I understood, as the council said, when people bought homes there or built there, you knew you were buying next to a business. But I knew I was buying next to an auto body shop. I had no intention of buying and looking out my window to a parking lot at that point. And that's what the neighbor across the street from 20 Stockbridge is going to see if and when this gets passed. He's going to see a parking lot. I truly understand what they're doing, but they're not telling you that nothing they've come to you in the last 4 meetings or the PCC meeting has changed. They provided pictures to you tonight. They want to put a parking lot in, a gravel lot, they want to fence it or put bushes or vegetation or whatever they want to put in there. And I was the one that said that when Councilor Theodoro mentioned they don't need a permit to do that. They can do that now. They could have cleaned the house up years ago or choose not to and just left it the way it has been. I don't, and I had notes about as Mr. Frechette had already mentioned, I took offense too. I took the time out to come down to that meeting, and I thought every one of the planning board members, not only did I think they posed a different reason, but every one of them I thought was solid. There was no ifs or maybes in any of their responses. Not that I thought. Economically, financially, and it's just encroaching on the business. When I went door to door back in January to offer the notice of this, I wasn't trying to sway anybody, and I made it very clear to the people I knocked on the doors, I'm not looking to change your opinion. I just want to let you know, because the policy's in place by the city right now, and I'm not knocking that. That's another argument. They don't have to let you know. And as I said earlier, if it wasn't for Facebook, and I'm not a member of Facebook, I don't do that social media, I wouldn't have known about this. But when I knocked on doors, I got the same look from everybody but one. Really, I never heard of that. I didn't know that was happening. And again, I'll tell you the same thing I told Councilor Theodoro. I don't know why they're not here. Kind of shame on them, I feel. I'm sorry. Because they won't be happy, I don't think. But the one door that was different was a gentleman who will become the abutter on Magnolia. And he just abruptly interrupted me and said, I kind of hope it passes. And when I asked if he could tell me why, he said, because I want to do the same thing. I want to come in and I want to approach the planning board, and I would like to have my residents. He's got 3 lots. So if this goes through, now you're talking 300 feet off the boulevard on both Magnolia and Stockbridge that could become business zoned. And as I mentioned earlier, Stockbridge Ave right now only has 4 houses on the even number side that are residents. You're going to lose one of those if this passes through and they take down the house. I've taken enough of your time. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say for the record, we did get a copy of the abutters list that was sent out. I believe there are 30 abutters that were notified.
Can I make
Yeah,
one more
sure.
statement? I'm sorry. And you'll be happy to know that for whatever it's worth, I didn't get to 2 and 3. Again, I'm only here because my mother-in-law, who is not my abutter, but a couple of streets over, was notified. Now, I reviewed the tape from the February 23rd meeting, upon which I don't know if it was you, Mr. Milanazzo, who asked the city manager's office, could they notify so many feet?
Right.
And I understand the city manager said that it's not, we post it, we do all of that. So then somebody else, and again, I apologize for
I think
not
it was Attorney Council Leahy.
had said that, well, can we notify the people in attendance here tonight? Again, I live at 33 Dunbar Avenue. My name is Al Saber. I didn't get a notice of tonight's meeting. I knocked on doors on Stockbridge in Delaware, Magnolia. Several of them did. Now, I've been here. This is my 5th time in front of the pulpit. I didn't get noticed of this. I don't know for what reason. Maybe they get tired of my long-windedness. I don't know. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak before the subcommittee? Any of my colleagues have any other comments? Councilor Samara? Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening, Anne Marie.
Good evening, my name is Anne Marie Page. I live at 26 Fremont Street in Lowell, and I'm the current president of the Citywide Neighborhood Council. This has been very informative, and I think we want to make sure people don't get the wrong idea. Lowell is not anti-business. The Hamill family are good people, they have a good reputation, and they've been good neighbors. But I think Mr. Frechette hit the nail on the head. When you come into our neighborhood and you start changing things from a neighborhood to business-owned, you're opening the door for a lot of problems. So I bought my house, I'm happy with my house. I don't want to move my house where it is now, but I don't want to find out 3 months from now somebody's going to take the next 3 houses, change the zoning, and I'm living next to McDonald's, you know what I mean? It just opens too many doors, as Mr. Frechette said. I appreciate the planning board for their hard work, and makes us a little nervous. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Councilor Samaras?
Thank you, Chairman Milanazzo. When this came up, I had asked the city manager if they would provide a report regarding the master plan for that area. You're here, Mr. Slagle. I mean, basically, when you developed a master plan, that included the neighbors, people in the area, correct? When you come up with a plan, how does that develop?
Correct. I think Mr. Frechette described the process appropriately, which is takes in all the stakeholders, business owners, neighbors, neighborhood leaders. It's a kind of a well thought out, long process to create both the Pawtuckaville master plan and the city's master plan.
Thank you. That's a very important statement to make, okay? And the thing is, and I can understand any plan is subject to change. However, what I see here is piecemeal change. And if we were to go into a master plan, the way I look at it, and make piecemeal change, we destroy the integrity of the plan. There is no plan. Piecemeal change does not allow for a future that is workable the way I see it. So the thing is, I think it's important that when we make a master plan or a plan, that we just can't arbitrarily make moves that seem adequate at the time. I think that's what's created a lot of the problems in some of the neighborhood business districts. So basically, I'm for maintaining the master plan because I think it is a plan, it is a sense of direction. It also gives comfort to the people who live in there, whether they're business people or homeowners. They know what the plan is. And I'm bothered by piecemeal change. That is something I would have a very hard time to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else at this point? As I mentioned, yes, sir. Come to the podium. Name and address, please. The podium, yes. Did you want to?
I want to say something, please. My name is Makar. I just opened up my business like 7 months ago.
I could interject, Councilor.
Yes.
You're on for the second meeting. I understand. He has a petition before the city council.
Oh, okay. This is the zoning subcommittee. This is a different meeting.
It's a different
That's
one.
okay. Our meeting starts at 6:30, sir. Anyone else? As I mentioned earlier, yes, Deb.
Okay, I'm all about like resolution. Okay, so I think we've had 4 bites at the apple with this, and we have the planning board giving you very sound reasons why, and you have 5 members of the Lowell Planning Board voting against the request. Councilor Samaras, that was gold, what you said. It's exactly, you put into words what we've all been saying. It's that creep, that piecemeal. It's like when you look at the master plan, we thought it's something we could hang our hats on, and then we find out we have to, gather people together at 5:30 and fight for it. This isn't the first meeting. I think this is the 5th bite at the apple, going over and over and over again. So I think at this point, when we said we didn't want you to take any action tonight there were a couple of reasons why, and one was we felt we were not notified about this meeting appropriately, whether or not there's a difference of opinion about how we all got notified. So we were uncomfortable that we couldn't get the message out to the neighborhoods or let everybody know they had a chance to be here. And why didn't you find 30 people here? Because it's 5:30 and people have families. That's a suburban single-family residential area. And so we wanted to have it at the city, at our PCC meeting, which would be 7 o'clock at night. But after the fourth or fifth meeting about the same subject over and over again, I'm comfortable as the chairman of PCC that it doesn't have to come back to the neighborhood, because this is on film now. Now I get to send out this meeting to LTC to everybody. So I think at this point that if this is the fourth bite of the apple, that perhaps you could send this to the city council and get a resolution about this, and take the wisdom of the planning board, the wisdom of Councilor Samaras. I did, Councilor Jim Leary, the very first night it was at the council, came up with, again, he said, you know, the fabric of residential neighborhoods where you hang your hat at night. You got to make up your mind. Do you want residential neighborhoods? And then, and Rita Mercia sticking up for us that we didn't know what he was talking about. There's a report, but nobody ever saw it, so you can't follow along, but it was irrelevant because we're not here for it's not a planning board, it's not a review for a plan. So I would like to, if you could get this to a resolution and maybe bring it to the city council and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I certainly appreciate your comments, but I did receive calls today about this, and I told the people that called me that there would be no action this evening. So again, if my colleagues want to make a motion that we make a recommendation this evening, that's fine. But again, the calls that I did receive today, I indicated there'd be no action tonight. Yes.
So when you give your report, and then we'll have LTC, then you could perhaps put it on the agenda for another night so people can show up if they want to speak again on it. What we did not want to happen tonight, that you would make a recommendation and move it forward when people didn't have a chance to speak on it. So I think at this point here, you know, if you go to the city council, you don't have to have the vote tonight, but you can at least bring to in your committee report all the fine words and everything that was said, and bring it to the council as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. With that said, what's the wish of the committee at this point?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we obviously want to adhere to Deb Forgione's request. We do want input from the entire neighborhood at a better time, if you will. So I'd be willing to put it off probably to a full hearing, maybe perhaps to the full council. But in the interim, I would like to feel my colleagues out who are here tonight about possibly having given this to Mr. Slagle here for a report and recommendation to the. I understand. Look, I understand what you're saying, and perhaps Mr. Slagle give us a good explanation how it does or does not fall into the Pawtucketville Master Plan. It's just a thought while we make time. It's going to be a week or two before the hearing anyway. Any additional information, I know I would find valuable. I don't know how my colleagues feel, but it's just a thought.
Thank you, Councilor Belanger. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you receive calls from the public about this meeting, did they indicate if they were in favor or against?
They did not. They just wanted to know what action we were taking tonight, and I said it was going to be informational.
And how many calls are you talking about?
2 or 3. 3. It's 3. Yeah. But again, if the subcommittee wants to make a motion to either delay action and recess until we have the Monday night meeting, and then we'll reconvene at a later date, or if the recommendation is whatever to the subcommittee, we can then bring that back to the full council this evening. Or, as Deb indicated, put off the vote of this full council. But again, that just draws everybody back out to another meeting. So it's, you know, and again, it's the discussion that and again, we did hear a lot of good information this evening relative to why the planning board took the vote that they took, why the residents feel they're against it. My colleagues had a lot of good comments about the master plan and how this is a piecemeal encroachment, if you will. But then again, at the end of the day, it's up to the subcommittee to either make a recommendation this evening or recess until after Monday night's meeting. Now, I understand Monday night's meeting is the neighborhood subcommittee's been invited to attend, and this isn't actually officially on their agenda because it's before the zoning subcommittee. But I understand that it'll obviously be discussed.
Mr.
Counsel-
Chair,
yes.
did you ever hear of the saying, fish or cut bait?
Oh, sure.
So why don't we just start fishing and make a recommendation? I know there are people that probably would have wanted to be here, and like, I mean, how many times do these people have to come back? It's getting monotonous now. You must have an idea of what decision or recommendation you can make for the full council. There's no sense to prolong this over and over. I made up my mind despite the fact that I didn't have anything in front of me, but I listened to everyone. I listened to people that are involved with the planning zoning board, and they seem to be telling me and indicating there's a master plan in place and we're not following what the recommendations of the neighborhood in that group is about. I don't understand that. I would just
Mr. Chairman,
fish.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
One comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Clerk?
Just on procedurally, councilors, this matter was at a public hearing at the time. A public hearing was opened, it was suspended, and it was referred to this board. So I think any action is going to have to be taken back again in that public hearing, which would have to be noticed on an agenda, which is not on tonight's agenda. So I think procedurally, it's got to go back to the public hearing that had been suspended by the body, so it'll be referred to the subcommittee for their report and recommendation.
Is that clear? It has to actually, the city council can't actually take a vote at tonight's meeting because it has to go back to the public hearing, which has to be duly advertised. So again, there'd be no, yes,
But then they'd still have a chance to come forward at the
Correct.
public hearing.
Correct.
So I would look forward to a recommendation and a vote. But that's my opinion, and it isn't up to me.
okay. Council Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the clerk. Mr. Clerk, if we deny the motion right now here at a subcommittee, does it even go back to a public hearing, or does
It needs to go back to a public
Okay.
hearing, Counselor. In order for an ordinance to fail or prevail, it has to be provided for by a public hearing. That public hearing has been noticed. It's been put in the paper, as all ordinances are put in the paper and notified on the prior agenda. My point would be that if it's going to be brought up again, and it will have to be brought up at some time at the wish of the body, I would place it on the agenda when that body would like that placed on there, and it'll be taken up, reopened, or unsuspended, and take its course.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. With that being said, move to put it back towards a public hearing.
Motion's been made to put it back before the public hearing.
Second?
Second. Any discussion on that issue this evening? Roll call?
Chairman Milanazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Belanger.
Yes.
Councilor Rourke.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Is that clear to the petitioner and,
That's clear.
okay.
So-
And to the neighbors, is that clear? That, again, it go-
Councilor Milanazzo, this will be advertised and will be notified.
correct.
And it will be at 7
This-
o'clock. That's when the
Correct.
public hearing.
This matter has already been put on an agenda. It's going to be put, the notice that these people will get now will be a notice on an agenda, which is published Friday afternoon by the city. It's on the city website, and it's in my clerk's office. That's the notice that I'm provided.
And it could be on a week from tonight.
Could be on a week from tonight.
And so what we will do is, Mr. Clerk, you could notify me, and I will make sure that we have an email to go out to Ms. Forgione so that there's direct notice to her and direct notice to the Pawtuckaville Citizens Association.
We put that, when that agenda comes out, I'll send it along.
Okay.
I believe most of the neighborhood organizations do get a copy of the agenda. We post it out every Friday. It goes to a wide variety of people.
Okay. Counselor Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manager, would you expect that this would be on next week's agenda? Thank you.
Okay, so as long as we're clear and it's being televised, this will be on as a follow-up public hearing next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Okay. Anything else to come before the zoning subcommittee? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
No adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, opposed? Again, thank you all very much.